In this video, we'll talk about the Cruising Operating Module, what it does and how it works. We start from the OneIS login page at anktravelgroup.com. You don't need to put any username or password up here. You just click on the login button under the Microsoft logo. You can also access the system from a tablet connected to the internet. When you click on the Microsoft logo, you'll be asked to enter your email address and password. You use the same credentials you use to access your computer. All the functionalities are pretty much the same as the desktop version we see here. From the OneIS homepage, we scroll down at the bottom and we expand the Cruising Operating Module section. You can click on the star icon, so this will put the link to the module at the top of the page under the highlights section. We click on the Cruise Operating Module link. This is the main page of the Cruise Operating Module. It's divided into 4 sections. In this video, we'll talk about the Setup section and the Cruising Operating Module ones. The documentation and budget control section are still being worked on and they will be covered in a later video. At the top left, you will see the company name that you have access to. The company drives the segmentation of information you see in this cruising module. The Shorex we set up here under one company will not be visible to other companies. They only live under the company they're created in. Let's start from the Setup section where the core configuration is managed. Here we have the cruise line and ship setup where we view and manage all the cruise lines and their ships. The itinerary setup where we have all the itineraries of the above cruise lines which are grabbed automatically from the web. The Shorex setup where we can create and manage all the Shorex that we have, and the turnaround setup where we can create and manage turnarounds. Let's open the cruise line and ship setup. At the top left, you have the cruise line setup tab, where we have a list of all the cruise lines which have already been added to the system. We can always add more cruise lines or change their names. Just let us know if this is necessary. In the ship setup tab, you see the list of all the ships per cruise line. At the top, you can filter by cruise line and by ship. Per each ship, we can select what kind of service we provide to them: Shorex, turnaround, land. If any of the checkboxes are selected, the ship will have the in-scope check, which will make it visible in our cruising module, as we'll see later. To modify these checkboxes, you just double-click on a line or click on the pencil icon and edit it. Here you can tick or untick them. We also have the capacity field, which will be populated with the guest capacity in the near future. At the moment, we have ticked all the checkboxes for all ships. You can edit this yourself, but if you have a list of cruise lines which we know will never be in scope, just let us know and we'll untick them for you from the backend. No need for you to go and do that one by one. That's it for the cruise line setup. We can click on the arrow at the top or click the back button at the bottom. We are back to the main page and we can select the itinerary setup. Here we have the list of the itineraries of all the ships that we have set up in the previous section. They are automatically added here by grabbing them from the Cruise Mapper website. The system won't display anything at first because the list would be way too long. So first you need to select at least the city you're interested in. Let's pick Melbourne and click on search. So now you see all the calls that any ship will make in Melbourne starting from a specific date. You can of course narrow down the search by adding more filters like cruise line, ship, company and time frame. So we see here that the Disney Wonder is calling Melbourne on this date and that this particular ship is in scope for all our services, as this was explained earlier. You can select how many lines you can see in a single page by selecting different numbers in the bottom left corner and move between pages on the right. If you don't see what you're looking for, like in case of charters, you can add more itineraries by clicking on the Create button at the top right and put the required information like date, city, cruise line and ship. Tick what we're offering and then click on Save. If you want to work on a particular itinerary, you can search for it here. Let's say we want to see Princess Cruises calls in Melbourne in March 2026. So we click on search and we have these three. We can select them one by one or click on select them all at the bottom and click on promote. This way these itineraries will be loaded in the cruising operating module. As you do this, you'll be taken to the cruising operating module and you'll see the itineraries you just added here, the last three at the bottom. We'll be back here later in the video. Let's now go back to the main page and select the Shorex setup. Here you'll see the list of all the Shorex that we have set up. As mentioned before, you'll only see the ones pertaining to your company. You can filter the list by selecting at the top the code, the Shorex name or the city. Here we only have a couple of Shorex that were created as a test. Let's open this one and see how it's set up. You can just double click or click on this icon. In the Setup tab, we have the A&K Shorex code, the Shorex name. Then we have the group, which you can select from the drop-down list. We have Basic, Luxury, Standard, and then all these transfer ones. If you select one of these and save, you will see different tabs up here, as we see later. Then we have the city where we operate the Shorex. We have the multi-coach pick list, and here you can select the maximum duration of the Shorex. The coach selection drives the maximum number of pegs you can put here. You can select if the Shorex will have a driver, a traffic guide, or a ship escort. You can then put the detailed description here and the notes. Once you've done making changes, always remember to click on Save. Under the Template tab, you create the templates for the Shorex. You can have multiple ones, like you see here. Let's open one already created. Here you set the sequence of events of this particular template. First, we visit the government house, which takes 30 minutes. Then we do the heritage walk for 60 minutes. And then we visit the shrine. Once we have defined the first one and saved it, we can clone it by clicking on this button. Give it a different name and save. Then we can change the sequence of events by clicking on the up and down arrows. So for this template, we visit the shrine first, then do the walk, then visit the government house. You can select which is the default template by clicking on this box. This template will then be the one which will be automatically selected in the cruising module, once you pick the Shorex, as we'll see later. For each event, you can also add an image by clicking on the ECM button, which will then be added to the documentation of the Shorex. For example, you could add the menu of a restaurant. You can add new events by clicking on the plus button here, which will open a window where you can insert all the needed information, like the service type from the drop-down list, the service name, and if not present, you can add it by clicking on this button. Then the options, again, you can add one. the supplier from the drop-down list of registered suppliers, and the duration. Then you click on Add. Then you can move the event up and down the list. Always remember to click on Save when done. You can set up a template for one or more specific cruise lines by clicking on the Set Cruise Line button and by selecting one or more cruise lines from the list and clicking on Save. This way, this template will show up in the cruising module only for the selected cruise lines. If no cruise line is selected, like in these templates, by default the template will be available to all of them. In the Cruise Line tab, you can manage the documentation pertaining this Shorex of all the cruise lines who will use it. We can open an existing one by double-clicking on the line or by clicking on the pencil icon. You see here the document name and description, then the Shorex detail that come from the cruise line, code, name, the cruise line name, duration, and the dates. By clicking on this button, you can add the image that the cruise line wants us to put in the printed documentation that will be given to the guide. The image will be resized based on the place where it will show up. Once done, click on Save. You can add new cruise line documentation by clicking on the Create button up here and fill out all the required fields we saw before. In the Cruise Line Price tab, for each cruise line you can define a price for the Shorex. You can create a new one or edit an existing one, like this one, by double-clicking on the line or by clicking on the pencil icon. You can define here the name and the code of the contract, select the cruise line and a ship if necessary, or you can leave it blank, so it will be valid for all ships of the cruise line. Then the year of validity of the contract and the currency. Here you define the prices for adults and for children, based on the number of participants. When done, click on Save. You can create a new line by clicking on the Create button and by filling out the fields as we saw before. In the Rules tab, you can select when the Shorex is available. You can select the days of the week it can be available. You can select specific blackout periods, which will occur only during the specific dates of a specific year, or select recurring blackout dates, which will occur every year. Once done, click on Save. We click on the Back button to go back to the Shorex setup page. Now we've seen a Shorex that was already created, but of course you can create a new one by clicking on the Create button at the top right. Here you have the Setup tab, where you enter the basic information. You won't have all the tabs we saw before in this window. You first need to click on Save down here to add your new Shorex. Then you can open it by double-clicking on the line or by clicking on this icon, and then you'll have all the tabs that you can edit as we saw before. If we want to create a movement item, like a transfer to or from the pier or airport or the hotel, we click on the Create button up here, as always. We fill out the fields as before. Then in the Groups section, we select from the drop-down list the movement we want. We have all the different scenarios here. Then we click on Save in the lower right. You can see that we have less tabs up here, as we don't have the Template tab, as this technically isn't a real Shorex. You only have the Cruise Line Dock tab and the Cruise Line Price one. The Cruise Line Dock tab is the same as we saw before for a standard Shorex. If you go to the Cruise Line Price tab though, if we click on the Create to add a new pricing, we have a new drop-down list added, the Price Setup, where you can select if we want to have the pricing per guest, like we saw before, or per unit. If you select per unit, you need to just put one price here. You can click on Save when done. You see here the new pricing added. You have the ability to clone a Shorex so that you don't have to start from scratch every time by clicking on this button. You give it a new name, a new code, and you click on Clone. That's it for the Shorex setup section, so let's click the back button now and let's select the turnaround setup. Here you can see all the defined turnarounds with their attributes. You can filter them at the top here or create a new one here. Let's open an existing one by double-clicking on the line or by clicking on the pencil. You have a description, the company, the city, the cruise line and the ship if necessary, the currency and price. You can create a new record by clicking on the Create button, and you can fill out all the necessary fields. Click on Save when done. Let's go back to the main page. So we've now set up all the elements that will be loaded into the cruising operating module. Let's open it now. You will see here all the itineraries that have been promoted from the itinerary setup section. You can see the 3 itineraries that we have promoted earlier, the Princess Cruises ones from March 2026. Only the promoted itineraries will show up here. So if you want to work on a specific itinerary, you first need to promote it from the itinerary setup page. You can filter through them at the top by cruise line, ship, date, city or country. Let's check the properties of the first one here by clicking on the pencil icon on the right here. Here you can select from the drop-down the brand you want to use, Acorn or A&K. Put the expected ship's arrival time and departure. You can check or uncheck the Shorex, turnaround and land boxes based on what we offer in this particular case. You can add the port manager by clicking here and selecting from the names we have loaded. You can filter the list here at the top by multiple fields, or if the name is not present, you can create a new port manager record by clicking on the Create button, and you fill all the details here and click on Save. You can also put the booking number that will need to provide the cruise line to get the purchase order. You don't need to fill the Acorn contact field, as this will be taken from the brand you selected. Let's pick one of those itineraries we promoted before, the 2nd of March one, and let's add the itinerary details by clicking on the pencil icon. We keep Acorn as brand, put arrival time at 8 AM and departure at 6 PM. And we click on Save. Now we double click on the itinerary to add the Shorex. You can see here we have 4 tabs: Shorex, Movements, Turnaround and Land. Let's start from the Shorex tab, where we can add a Shorex by clicking on the Add Shorex button in the bottom right. Here we can select from the drop-down list all the Shorex that are available for this particular ship, cruise line, port and on this day. This is based on all the properties we set up for the Shorex in the Shorex setup section. So we select the one we want. As we said earlier, the template that gets attached automatically is the default one, but we can always remove it and pick another one available. Let's pick this one. We click on Add. So now we have attached this particular Shorex with this template to this specific itinerary. We can modify the properties of this Shorex by either double-clicking on the line or by clicking on the pencil icon. We have a few tabs here. Let's start with the Setup one. Here we see the company this Shorex is attached to, its name, which we cannot modify here, the template, which we can always change, as we saw just before, and the attached contract, which tells us the price per person. Then here we set the departure time for the Shorex, let's say 9 AM. You don't need to specify the arrival time, as this will be automatically calculated for you based on the duration of the Shorex. Here we put the numbers of adults that will join the Shorex, like 10. We put the children, 2. And if we have a free of charge ship escort, let's say 1. In the sticker field, we can put any identification that the cruise line has for the buses. Let's put yellow. And click on Save. You can see that the system has automatically calculated the arrival time. Same with the adult and child price, based on the number of packs we put. We can also change the numbers directly from here without going into the edit page, and the totals will be recalculated. If you add a number of passengers higher than the max packs value, you'll get an error message. Like if we put 50, you'll get this error. Let's put back the correct number. You can see at the bottom the grand total of packs and price. Let's go back to edit this Shorex by double-clicking on the line. Let's go to the Operative tab now. Here you can put the real departure and arrival times of the Shorex, and if there's a guide, you can add them by clicking on this button. Filter through the list of names and pick the correct one. You can edit their details if necessary by clicking on the pencil icon. Then you can put the details of the driver and of the bus, like their license, mobile number, vehicle and vehicle plate. Once you put all the details, you click on Save. Moving to the next tab, Notes, we can put here all kinds of notes you need. Here we can put if someone requested to have a front seat, and in the notes you can specify their names. You can also tick if we need a wheelchair. The content of the first notes field here will be printed with the documentation that's given to the guide. The content of the internal notes field is just for internal notes and it will not be printed. In the Budget tab, we can put the expected occupancy of the ship in percentage and the number of children. We then click on Save. Let's go to the Movement tab. You can see here we already have a few movements added, but we can always add more by clicking on the Add Movement button in the lower right, and then by selecting one of the available movements we've created in the Shorex Setup section, and by clicking on Add. Once you've added the movement, it will show up in the list. Here you have this icon, which takes you to the transport list. Here you have the list of guests with their movement details. You can add a new one by clicking on the plus button in the upper right. Here you can fill out the necessary fields. The mandatory ones are name and surname, but of course you should populate the record with as many details as possible. Click on Save when done. Once you created one entry, you can always clone it by clicking on the Clone button here. You only have to put a new name and surname, and all the other details are copied over. You can upload a list of guests, instead of entering them manually, by clicking on this button here, and then by selecting an Excel spreadsheet with the list you want to import. If there are cases where you don't think it is required to have a list of guests, you can leave the list blank. You can edit all the details of the transfer by clicking on the pencil icon. Or you can clone it by clicking on this icon. Let's move now to the Turnaround tab of this itinerary, where we can add the turnarounds that we've set up before. We click on this green button in the bottom, and we select from the drop-down list one of the turnarounds that we set up before in the Turnaround section. We can see a preview, and then we can click on Add. You'll see the turnaround added here. You can add multiple turnarounds as necessary. In the Land tab, we can add a new line by clicking on the green button. Here we can add a booking we already have in Travel Studio or OneIS for a pre- or post-cruise activity by searching for it. You'll then be able to see the relative booking and add it by clicking on Save. The booking will still be managed by the reservation system, but you can attach it here as read-only for invoicing. We've now set up this itinerary with its Shorex, turnaround and land parts. Going back to the operating module main page, we can open another itinerary, like this one. Here we have set up multiple Shorex with different departure times and with different occupancies. You can see that the system calculates the prices for each, and at the bottom you have the grand totals. You can move the individual Shorex up and down, based on the departure times if you want. You can also clone a single Shorex to avoid creating them from scratch every time, by clicking on this button. Up here you see that we have 3 buttons: Operative, Notes and Budget. By clicking on each, you scroll through the line, revealing more details of this Shorex. You see here all the details we just reviewed. You can click on the Setup button to go back to the main information. You see here we have a couple of buttons for each Shorex. If you click on this one, you open up a new tab with the Shorex details we saw in the Shorex Setup section. Here you can edit all the Shorex details like we saw before. We go back to our cruising module and we see we have this other button next to the template. Here you see the details of the template, but you won't be able to edit them. You can add via the ECM button an image or a document, like a restaurant menu. Once done, you click on Save. So that's it for the cruising operating module. As mentioned before, we'll soon have also the documentation and budget control sections. If you have any questions regarding the cruising module, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you for watching and have a great day.